Jesus. All glories to
Please accept my humble obeisances to all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu, I'm outside. Prabhu, you may start. I think, I requested.
Oh, okay. Okay, welcome everyone to the morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from the third canto, chapter 6, verse number 8. So I'll begin with my prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadadi Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Otapata Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhayascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namaum Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatarine. Okay, so I will let me share my screen and I will read the verse, the Sanskrit verse, and translation and the purport. Okay, so again, Srimad Bhagavatam 3.6.8. Esha hi ashesha sattvanam atmam shah paramatmanah adayo avataro yatrasau bhutagramo vibhavyate. Esha hi ashesha sattvanam atma shah paramatmanah adayo avataro yatrasau bhutagramo vibhavyate. Synonyms or the word-to-word meanings. Esha, this, he, certainly, ashesha, unlimited, sattvanam, living entities, atma, self, amshaha, part, paramatmanah, of the super soul, adyaha, the first, avatara, incarnation, yatra, whereupon, asau, all those, bhuta grama, the aggregate creations, vibhavyate, flourish. Translation. The gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and plenary portion of the Super Soul. He is the self of an unlimited number of living entities, and in him rests the aggregate creation, which thus flourishes. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord expands himself in two ways, by personal expansions and separated minute expansions. The personal plenary expansions are Vishnu Tattvas, and the separated expansions are living entities. Since The living entities are very small. They are sometimes described as the marginal energy of the Lord. But the mystic yogis consider the living entities and the supersoul Paramatma to be one and the same. It is, however, a minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat or universal form of the Lord. Very short purport by Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manodishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadadi Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? All right, so we will begin with this is a continuation of the description of the creation of the universe, where in the previous verses it has been described that first of all Mahavishnu or Karanodakasai Vishnu is lying in the Karuna ocean outside of the material universes, and he then glances at the Mahatattva or Pradhan, and then comes from those unmanifested material energy or elements, then manifests the different universes. And when the universes are created, he, the Mahavishnu, then again expands himself into Garbhodakasai Vishnu and enters each of the universes and lies at the bottom of the universe. And then from Garbhodakasai Vishnu, there are more expansions. He again expands himself as Shirodakasai Vishnu, and these names are based on where they are located. So Kshirodakasai Vishnu means that he, within the material planet, he is located or he resides in the Kshira or in the milk ocean. Garbhodakasai Vishnu is lying on the Garbhoda ocean at the bottom of the universe. The universe is partially filled with water, and on that water he lies, and that ocean is named Garbhodaka ocean. And similarly, Karanodakasai Vishnu is in the Karanada river, or it's also called the ocean outside of the universe. So the first expansion of Garbhodakasai Vishnu is Kshirodakasai Vishnu, who is also the Paramatma or the Super Soul. And here it is mentioned that the gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord is the first incarnation and the plenary portion of the Super Soul. So again, from the Kshirodakasai Vishnu comes the gigantic universal form of the Supreme Lord. So the gigantic form of the universal or the Vishwaroop or the Virat Roop, there are different ways of calling that form, is the universe itself in the material form. However, because it is an incarnation, it is coming from the Lord himself. Here it is mentioned that first incarnation, and it is a plenary portion of the super soul. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that there are different types of expansions. The first is the plenary expansion, and then there are the separated minute expansions. And the personal plenary expansion are the Vishnu Tattvas. And the separated expansions are the living entities. So this is an interesting thing to note here, that the universal form is a plenary expansion and is also a Vishnu Tattva. And separated expansions, we know, they are the jivas, jivatmas, or the living entities, teeny tiny living entities, which are us. Now, we have heard many times in the Bhagavad Gita, 11th chapter also, where Krishna shows Arjuna the universal form or the Virat Roop. Prabhupada writes many times that it is a material form. And while it is a material form, because therefore it is a temporary form, and the devotees usually do not prefer to worship or associate with the Virat Roop for the very simple reason that any kind of reciprocation is not possible with the Virat Roop. Reciprocation means like if I were to pray something to Krishna, to God, or if I have some trouble, we go to the temple and pray to the deities. So that type of interaction is not possible with the Virat Roop, because the Virat Roop is material in nature, and also it is not pleasing to our eyes. We can see that Arjuna had got so disturbed when he saw that form that he requested Krishna to come back to his original four-handed and then finally to his two-handed arm form. He was completely not only disturbed, but he was scared, he was trembling. So that's why it's not possible. And in this chapter, in the 4th verse I was reading, Prabhupada mentioned that there are two material forms that Krishna expands into. This is the first one, which is the universal form. And the second one is the Archa Vigraha. Archa Vigraha means that the deity in the deity form. So when we have the deities in our home or the temple, that's also an expansion of Krishna in the material form. And they are both Vishnu Tattvas. The second point that I would like to bring up is that this is an incarnation of the super soul, meaning that it is an expansion from the Shirodaka Sai Vishnu. So I was looking up on this particular point, and I would like to read another purport from Srila Prabhupada from the first canto. I will share my screen. So this is the first canto, chapter 3, verse number 5. This form or the second manifestation of the Purusha is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different living entities like demigods, men, and others are created. Okay, so reading the purport, very quickly, as a summary, the different incarnations, for example, the Dasha avatars that we see, or the 22 incarnations mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, there are unlimited expansions or avatars that keep coming for our benefit. And all these avatars are coming from the Shirodaka Sai Vishnu, which is what Prabhupada will explain here. And of all of them, the first one, as mentioned in this verse today that we are reading, 3.6.8, the first of them is the gigantic universal form. So I'll read the purport. The Purusha, after creating innumerable universes in the Mahat Tattva, entered in each of them as the second Purusha, Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu. When he saw that within the universe there was only darkness and space without a resting place, he filled half of the universe with water from his own perspiration and laid himself down on the same water. This water is called Garbhodaka. Then from his navel, the stem of the lotus flower sprouted, and on the flower petals, the birth of Brahma, or the master engineer of the universal plan, took place. Brahma became the engineer of the universe, and the Lord himself took charge of the maintenance of the universe as Vishnu. Brahma was generated from Rajogun of the Prakriti, or the mode of passion in nature, and Vishnu became the Lord of the mode of goodness. Vishnu, being the transcendental to all the modes, is always aloof from materialistic affection. This has already been explained. From Brahma, there is Rudra or Shiva, who is in charge of the mode of ignorance of darkness. He destroys the whole creation by the will of the Lord. Therefore, all three, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, are incarnations of the Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu. From Brahma, the other demigods like Daksha, Marichi, Manu, and many others become incarnated to generate living entities within the universe. This Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu is glorified in the Vedas, in the hymns of Garbha Stuti, which begin with the description of the Lord as having thousands of heads, etc. The Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu is the Lord of the universe, and although he appears to be lying within the universe, he is always transcendental. This also has already been explained. The Vishnu, who is the plenary portion of the Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, is the super soul of the universal life, and he is known as the maintainer of the universe, or Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu. So the three features of the original Purusha are thus understood, and all incarnations within the universe are emanations from this Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu. So Prabhupada is writing, all incarnations within the universe are emanations from this Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu. I will not read the whole purport, maybe just another couple of paragraphs. In different millennia, there are different incarnations, and they are innumerable, although some of them are very prominent, such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Rama, Narsimha, Vamana, and many others. These incarnations are called Leela incarnations. Then there are qualitative incarnations, such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or Rudra, who take charge of the different modes of material nature. Lord Vishnu is non-different from the personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is in the marginal position between personality of Godhead and the living entities, or jivas. Brahma is always a jiva tattva. The highest pious living being, or the greatest devotee of the Lord, is empowered with the potency of the Lord for creation, and he is called Brahma. His power is like the power of the sun reflected in valuable stones and jewels. When there is no such living being to take charge of the post of Brahma, the Lord himself becomes a Brahma and takes charge of the post. Okay, so this is the main highlight that I wanted to bring up, is that all the incarnations that we see in the universe the Dasha avatars and other avatars, they are all coming from Shirodaka Sai Vishnu. And the first among them is the universal form, as mentioned here in this text that we are reading today. Now, some points Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, that since the living entities are very small, they are sometimes described as the marginal energy of the Lord, but the mystic yogis consider the living entities and the super soul Paramatma to be one and the same. It is, however, a minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat, or universal form of the Lord. Now we find that Prabhupada is usually very strong on these points, but here is very lenient and very merciful on the mystic yogis. So the mystic yogis say that the super soul or Paramatma and the living entities, they are one and the same. However, we know that they are not one and the same from the Bhagavad Gita itself. I mean, Prabhupada has mentioned this many times, but the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verse number 23, clearly states that also. It says that, Upadrastanu mantacha bharata bhokta maheshwara paramatmeti chapi ukto dehe asmin purusha paraha. Translation, yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul. So clearly states that apart from the living entity, there is also the supreme Lord or the super soul. And then we know that Prabhupada quotes on the Upanishads that how there is an analogy of two birds sitting on the same tree. One bird is doing all the activities while the other bird is watching and sanctioning all the activities, which is also mentioned in that verse. So with that, I will stop here. I will quickly summarize. This is a continuation of the universal creation of the universe as being described by, I believe, Maitreya Muni. And in this continuation, right now, the Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu has been explained how he's enters each universe, and from him there is further expansion of Kshirodaka Sai Vishnu, who is the super soul, who enters each living entity as Paramatma and every atom as the Paramatma. And from that Shirodaka Sai Vishnu, in terms of size, if we consider, he's extremely small, very, very tiny. If that Vishnu or if that form is within an atom, and we have also heard that he's 1/10,000 of the tip of the hair. From him expands the gigantic Virat Roop, huge Virat Roop. And that Virat Roop is the first plenary expansion among many and unlimited expansions that, or avatars, that would come in the universe. We read the purport from Bhagavatam 1.3.5, where Prabhupada is explaining that all these incarnations, such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narsimha, Rama, they are all incarnations coming from Shirodaka Sai Vishnu. And from among them, the first one is the universal form. And then we talked about Prabhupada mentioning that some yogis say that that super soul or Shirodaka Sai Vishnu and the living entity or the Jiva are the same. And he very liberally says that, yeah, it is a very small, minor point of controversy. After all, everything created rests on the gigantic Virat Rupa of the Lord, which is also, I believe, in the 7th chapter, Krishna says, everything is in me, but I'm not in them. So I'll stop here with this and invite any questions or discussions if there are any. I have a hard stop at 8 o'clock in about 3 to 4 minutes.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Go ahead.
No, I was just trying to say one comment. I think the Archa Vigraha, not Archa Vigraha, the Virat Rupa form is a material manifestation, right? So, but still it is coming through the internal potency. I mean, I was just looking at the purport to the same chapter, 4th verse.
Yeah,
Prabhupada says at the end, actually, by in spite of their material touch, such forms of the Lord as Virat and Archa are all non-different from his eternal form of as Lord Krishna.
yes, that's where I also got this information. I mean, what
Okay.
I talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's though because it is material, because it is a temporary, as you said, and also it doesn't exist in the spiritual world. So, but still it is non-different. But yeah, the devotees doesn't, I mean, give importance to it because, and like you quoted the example of Arjuna. So.
Yeah, and there are 2 material forms Prabhupada mentions in the purport, and those 2 material forms are internal potencies are the Virat Roop and Archa Vigraha, both. But we as devotees, we interact with the Archa Vigraha. Thank you. Yes, Radha Kunj Vihari Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, while we are touching 3rd canto, we come across Virat Roop, different forms of Virat Roop being explained 3 or 4 times. And, Bhagavad Gita also, we see that once. However, the mention of Dashavatara, Dashavatara, I don't know how to classify it. Is it really a Virat Roop or it's only a,
No.
The 10 forms of Vishnu are just put together and said this is Dashavatara. I just wanted to know where it comes in the Shastras and stuff like that. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Dasavatars are not part of the Virat Roop. They are internal potencies of the Lord, but only thing is that they come from their avatars or expansions of Shirodaka Sai Vishnu or the Super Soul. And the only material forms are these 2, as explained by Prabhupada. That's my understanding, that the Virat Roop or the Virat and the Archa Vigraha or the deity form in the temple. The others, Vamana, Matsya, Lord Nashinga, they are all Vishnu Tattva. They are spiritual in form. And the reference that I read from was Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.5. And then there are the details of those are also mentioned in the Bhagavatam, right? In I believe, the 1st canto itself.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
1st canto, or maybe it's the 2nd canto where all the 22 incarnations are mentioned. All right. So if there's nothing else, we will stop here. Thank you very much and have a good rest of your day. Vanchakalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhubhya vacha